Welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to The Account, bringing you the news report for New Year's Eve and day 311 of the war in Ukraine. Before the usual news segment today, I will go over a quick recap of yesterday's most important news. For today, the main topic was the Russian missile attack launched at Ukraine around noon. We will take a look at that first before we go over the rest of the news quickly by taking a look at the situation inside Ukraine, the occupied territories, and the international developments. But as usual, we will begin with the flashpoints along the front. Kreminna. Reports of Ukrainian forces attacking Holikova and Chydlivka north of Kreminna. Additionally, slow but steady progress of the armed forces of Ukraine is reported south of Kreminna. According to Shahed, the head of Luhansk Oblast military administration, the liberation of Kreminna would allow Ukrainian forces to advance on Starobilsk and Rubizhne Severodonetsk. This could weaken Russian positions around Bakhmut. Bakhmut. Over the past days, Russia has launched several attacks against and around Bakhmut, which saw success but have proven quite costly. Allegedly, the Russian forces were ordered to capture Bakhmut by the end of the year by any means necessary. A video shared on social media shows Russian soldiers on the premises of the champagne factory being targeted by Ukrainian artillery. Unconfirmed claims by Russian sources that Wagner units managed to break into southern Bakhmut from north of Klishchivka, marked with a cross. And now for a quick recap of yesterday's news. Lieutenant General Yevgeny Nikiforov is likely in the process of taking over command of Russia's Western Group of Forces, WGF, in Ukraine. He would be at least the fourth commander of the formation since the invasion and replaces Colonel General Sergei Kuzolev, who was appointed just 3 months ago. As the Chief of Staff of Russia's Eastern Group of Forces, EGF, during the early weeks of the invasion, Nikiforov would have been heavily involved in planning the disastrous attempt by the EGF and airborne forces to advance on Kyiv from the northwest via the Chernobyl area. WGF is almost certainly currently tasked with holding Russia's right flank, the area of Luhansk Oblast around Kreminna and Svatove. As either side could plausibly attempt an offensive in this sector, Nikiforov assumes an important operational role in the conflict. The continued churn of senior Russian officers probably reflects internal divisions regarding the Russian Ministry of Defense's future conduct of the war. One of the biggest news yesterday was the liberation of Novoselivsk in Luhansk Oblast by Ukraine's Kraken unit and the 92nd Mechanized Brigade. Aided by artillery and heavy equipment, they managed to push Russian units out of the settlement and establish firm control over it. There are many different opinions about the liberation. Many suggest that the Kraken video is most likely from earlier in the year and the situation has become more fluid since. I cannot comment on any of that, as I have no insight. However, this is the official report. Dmitry Peskov, press secretary of the President of the Russian Federation, explained why President Putin will not be speaking to journalists as he usually did before the pandemic. According to him, the reason is the flu and coronavirus mutations. The General Staff of Ukraine updated the number of missiles fired at Ukraine and amount shot down during the December 29th attack. They now report 70 missiles were fired and 58 were shot down. During the night of December 29th and December 30th, the Air Force of Ukraine reported Russia launched 16 Shaheds at Ukraine, with all of them shot down by air defense. And now the latest on the Russian missile attack on Ukraine today. Today, shortly after midday, air raid sirens started sounding throughout Ukraine amid a new Russian missile attack. According to the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Valery Zaluzhny, 12 out of more than 20 missiles were shot down. Air defense engaged targets throughout Ukraine amid explosions reported in multiple oblasts. So far, authorities reported at least 1 civilian killed and 28 injured. In Kyiv, at least 8 explosions were reported, with 1 killed and 11 injured, 1 critically. Due to the attack, several oblasts were preemptively cut off from power. And now for the news out of Ukraine. The General Staff of Ukraine reports that on December 30th, Russia launched 10 Shahed drones, 5 missile strikes and 29 airstrikes across Ukraine. All Shaheds were reportedly shot down by the air defense. Ukraine has returned another 140 prisoners of war, among them defenders of Mariupol and Snake Island. Meanwhile, Russia said it was bringing home 82 soldiers who reportedly were in mortal danger. Taking a look at the latest out of the occupied territories. The General Staff of Ukraine reported that Russia has already prepared lists of men from Crimea to be conscripted in January 2023 and handed them to the responsible draft officers. Earlier, the head of Ukrainian military intelligence, Budanov, has warned of an incoming wave of mobilization in Russia from January 5th. Petro Andriushchenko, the advisor to the Mariupol mayor, reports about new deployment of Russian military personnel and equipment to Berdiansk. On average, 10 tracked vehicles are being transported in the direction every day, as well as trucks filled with Russian mobilized men. Russian commanders also advise soldiers to buy local SIM cards and switch off Russian ones. The now famous raccoon stolen from Kherson Zoo has been accepted by Russian occupation authorities to the University of Melitopol. Allegedly, the raccoon applied for the forestry and information security faculties. And to wrap up the news segment, as always, the international developments. The Kremlin has released a guide on how propagandists should recap the year 2022. The document has 4 sections of recommendation. First, main themes. Here, the usual daily propaganda can be found. For example, Vladimir Putin made the right decision sending Russian troops into Ukraine as the West prepared to attack, conquer, and divide Russia. Second, strengthening Russia. Emphasizing Russia's closely united society and approval of President Putin shows unwavering support for the special military operation. Third, the special military operation. Any reports should be about the success of the special military operation. Fourth, the New World Order. Russia is described as a leader of countries who refuse Western exceptionalism and a leader of a just and democratic world. Putin is giving Europe a chance to come to its senses and regain subjectivity and its future. According to the head of Ukrainian military intelligence, Budanov, Russia is facing mounting problems with their strategic bombers. For example, Tu-95Ms are wearing out as maintenance is required. Russia does not have the same strategic aviation production as the USSR had. All current strategic bombers are old planes that have been modernized, extended, and updated. He went on to state Russia can at best produce 50 cruise missiles per month. Budanov claims Russia has enough missiles left for 2 more massive attacks on Ukraine. According to the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War, Russia is using increased drone attacks on Ukraine due to a depleting stock of cruise missiles. Russian President Vladimir Putin delivered his New Year's speech. Standing in front of people wearing military uniforms for 10 minutes, he repeated the standard Kremlin narrative. The war was necessary to defend the Donbas and fight Nazis in Ukraine. And now for the daily intelligence updates, starting with the UK Ministry of Defence. On December 29, 2022, Russian forces launched another wave of long-range strikes across Ukraine, once again primarily targeting the power distribution network. Since October, Russia has sustained a general pattern of conducting an intensive wave of strikes every 7 to 10 days. Russia is almost certainly following this approach in an attempt to overwhelm Ukrainian air defenses. However, there is a realistic possibility that Russia will break this pattern to strike again in the coming days in an effort to undermine the morale of the Ukrainian population over the New Year holiday period. And finally, the evening report by the General Staff of Ukraine. In the period from 12:40 to 14:30, the enemy launched a massive missile attack. According to preliminary data, a total of about 20 missile launches were carried out. Several of them did not reach Ukraine and fell on the territory of the Russian Federation. Information is being clarified. The forces and means of air defense of the Air Force destroyed 12 cruise missiles in Kyiv, Zhytomyr, and Khmelnytsky regions. Also in the Kyiv region, an enemy UAV Orlan-10 was shot down, which was conducting aerial reconnaissance during a missile attack and was trying to identify the positions of our air defense. The Russian occupying forces strengthened the administrative and police regime for the period of the New Year holidays in some settlements of the temporarily occupied territory. So, from December 31st, 2022 to January 6th, 2023, the city of Henichesk in the Kherson region was closed to the public, and residents of the surrounding villages were also prohibited from leaving. In order to install a system of engineering barriers in the temporarily occupied and occupied territories of Donetsk, Luhansk, and Kherson regions, the occupiers are recruiting civilians from the territory of the Russian Federation. And this wraps up today's news report. If you're interested in any of the articles, you can find links to them in the description as usual. Thank you for tuning in, have a great day, and Happy New Year to everyone. You were listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.